Did anyone ever tell you the brutal truth about life after 80? Crossing into your 80s brings a quiet shift that few people talk about. Not the surface level stuff like birthdays or slower mornings, but the deeper, often unspoken changes. It's a time filled with both wisdom and loss, presence and distance, deep peace, and sometimes deep loneliness. And if you're not prepared for some of those shifts, they can catch you off guard, leaving you wondering, why didn't someone tell me? In this video, we're walking through the often invisible realities of life after 80. Not to scare you, not to depress you, but to offer clarity. Because when you see these things coming, you're no longer at their mercy. You can prepare for them, and you can meet them with strength instead of surprise. We'll explore the shrinking social circle, the way the body slowly stops bouncing back, the creeping dependence that feels uncomfortable even when it's necessary, the quiet way society starts to overlook you, and that strange ache that shows up when old regrets meet too much time and too little purpose. But we won't stop there, because hidden within those truths is a power most people overlook, the ability to choose how to respond. Stay with us until the end. Some of these truths may feel heavy, but they open the door to something quietly beautiful. Acceptance, resilience, and a chance to shape the final stretch of life with a dignity no one else gets to define but you. After 60, most people are still full of movement. There's laughter in the air, plans still being made, birthdays celebrated with full tables, and calendars that include outings and errands. You still feel like you're part of the rhythm of life. But slowly, sometimes so slowly that you barely notice at first, that rhythm begins to shift. The invitations slow down. The phone rings less. You catch yourself looking around and realizing that someone you used to talk to every week hasn't called in a while. You assume they've just been busy. But time passes, and it becomes clear life is moving on, and you're not always being brought along. You start to outlive people. Friends pass. Neighbors move away or into care facilities. Even siblings who once shared your childhood memories now respond with short calls or long silences. People who once knew you well are suddenly just old photographs in your drawer or names in your address book with no one to answer at the other end. There's a soft grief in this kind of loneliness. Not loud, not dramatic, just a slow fading of the social fabric you once belonged to. You might not feel it every day, but on holidays or during those long afternoons, the silence can speak louder than any noise. And no one warns you how loud silence can get after 80. I once knew a man named Walter. At 84, he went to the same coffee shop every morning. He sat in the same seat, ordered the same drink. For years, his friends would meet him there. No need to call ahead. It was their unspoken agreement. A little routine, a little laughter, a little belonging, but over time, the laughter stopped. One friend passed from cancer. Another had a stroke and couldn't drive anymore. Another simply moved to be closer to family. And one day, Walter looked up and realized he was the only one left at that corner booth. It's a strange thing, he told me, to walk into a place where everyone used to know your name, and now you're just a man by the window. That kind of emotional shift doesn't just change your mood. It changes how you see yourself. You can begin to feel invisible, even in familiar places. The spaces you once filled with stories, laughter, and purpose begin to feel a little too large. But knowing this isn't the end of the story, it's where a new kind of courage begins. The kind of courage that gets you to pick up the phone and call someone, to invite instead of wait for an invitation. To start something new, a book club, a walking group, a weekly letter to your grandchildren. Because connection still matters, maybe even more now. It just no longer comes to you automatically. You have to go and get it. And yes, that's hard. But after 80, you've already proven your strength. You've survived war, loss, mistakes, joy, and decades of change. You're not fragile. You're just learning to swim in new waters. And that means you can still build relationships, ones that match who you are now. Not just who you used to be, but while the emotional landscape changes, so too does the physical one. After 60, most people still bounce back. A cold lasts a few days. A stumble is followed by a quick recovery. Sleep helps, rest helps, and you trust that tomorrow you'll feel better. But after 80, the bounce gets shorter. Recovery takes longer. And even when you do feel better, It's not always the better you used to know. You might feel slower, weaker, or a little less steady on your feet. The body starts making decisions without your approval. You wake up and something aches for no reason. You sit too long, and it takes a moment just to stand again. You eat something, and your stomach responds in a way it never used to. And sometimes, it's not even about pain. It's the unpredictability that gets you. You might feel fine in the morning, run an errand, come home, and suddenly feel like something's off. A dizzy spell, a tightness in your chest, a sense of fatigue that sleep doesn't fix. And the next thing you know, you're in a doctor's office hearing about tests, and we just want to be cautious. Even the language of healthcare changes. Doctors no longer talk about cures. They talk about management, monitoring, quality of life. Gloria, 81, was one of the sharpest women I'd ever met. Former teacher, widow, walk her 2 miles every day. But one morning she missed a step on the porch and twisted her ankle. What should have been a week of ice and rest turned into a month of complications. A muscle strain led to swelling. Swelling led to reduced mobility. Reduced mobility triggered blood pressure issues. And suddenly, Gloria wasn't walking 2 miles anymore. She was using a walker just to get to the kitchen. It wasn't the fall, she told me. It was what it took away from me. And that's the part no one talks about. After 80, the problem isn't just the injury. It's what the injury takes away. Your confidence, your balance, your ability to move freely without fear. And once you lose that, it's hard to get it back. Not impossible, but harder. This physical vulnerability also brings something many older adults aren't ready to face: dependence. After a lifetime of being the one who helped others, who solved problems, who cooked meals and drove cars and carried bags and fixed a sink and planned a trip, you now find yourself needing help. And needing help doesn't just inconvenience you. It stings. There's a quiet shame in asking someone to tie your shoes or drive you to the store or stay on the phone a little longer because you forgot if you took your pills. That dependence doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like grief for the person you were. And sometimes that grief sneaks up on you. It might hit you when you struggle to open a jar, or when you can't lift your grandchild without feeling a twinge. It might hit you when your daughter rearranges your kitchen and you can't find anything, or when your son starts making decisions without really asking for your opinion. The truth is, even well-meaning help can feel like loss. And society, knowingly or not, begins to treat you differently. After 80, you start to disappear in ways you never expected. People talk around you. They assume you can't keep up. Strangers call you sweetie or dear, not realizing how patronizing it sounds. Technology outpaces you, and suddenly it feels like the world is speaking a language you no longer understand. You're not being rejected. You're being left behind. And that's a different kind of pain, one that's harder to name. You begin to feel like a ghost in your own life. Still here, still wise, still full of stories, but increasingly invisible. And maybe the heaviest truth of all is this: time changes its texture. It stretches. The days grow longer. Not because there's more to do, but because there's less. The pace slows. And when the pace slows, something else emerges: reflection. At first, it feels like nostalgia, remembering good times, old friends, love stories. But sometimes it morphs into something more complicated: regret. You start to think about the things you didn't say, the risks you didn't take, the relationships that ended without closure, the forgiveness you never offered or never asked for. And with so much time and so little distraction, those thoughts begin to fill the silence, not always with sadness, sometimes just with weight, a sense that your story had chapters you didn't quite finish writing. And no one tells you how loud that silence can become. But here's the other side of the truth. Brutal as some of these realities may be, they also hold a strange kind of power. Because now, you are free in a way you've never been before. There's no one left to impress, no career to chase, no image to maintain. Just you, raw, real, and wiser than ever. And that wisdom, it's worth something. It gives you the power to live with clarity, to forgive where you once held grudges, to speak honestly without fear, to love fiercely without pretending. to spend your remaining time not in denial or despair, but in full possession of your truth. You can choose connection even when it's hard. You can nurture your body with kindness instead of frustration. You can accept help without letting it define you. And you can find peace, not because life got easier, but because you became strong enough to face it with open eyes. So if you're past 80 or headed there soon, know this: you are not alone. You are not invisible. You are not finished. You are entering a part of life that is quieter, yes, but also deeper. A chapter not everyone gets to read. And in that chapter, there is still time for laughter, for meaning, for healing, for softness, for boldness, and for choosing what kind of legacy you'll leave. Not in wealth or fame, but in presence, in the way you hold someone's hand, in the way you listen, in the way you still show up, even if it takes a little longer. The brutal truths of life after 80 don't have to defeat you. They can become the very things that lead you back to yourself. And that is not just survival. That is triumph. And yet, for all its losses and slow unspoolings, life after 80 isn't only about what fades. Sometimes it's about what remains, and surprisingly, what begins. You see, when life slows down, when the crowd thins and the spotlight moves elsewhere, something extraordinary can happen. Your focus shifts inward, and not in a selfish way, but in a profound, necessary way. You begin to ask questions you've never had time to truly sit with. Who have I become? What parts of myself have I never really explored? And perhaps most importantly, what still matters? Deeply, honestly, quietly, in this chapter one now find myself in, there's something powerful in having fewer distractions. At first, it feels like boredom. But underneath that boredom is a kind of awakening. You begin to notice things again. The way the light hits the kitchen table in the afternoon, the birds outside your window, the feel of warm socks on a cold floor. Small things, but somehow richer, fuller. They hold more weight now, maybe because they're no longer competing with noise. When you're younger, life rushes by like a river in spring. After 80, it's more like a pond. Still, reflective, and in that stillness, you begin to see yourself clearly, maybe for the first time in decades. But clarity is a double-edged gift, because it brings beauty and sorrow in equal measure. You remember the people you loved who are no longer here, a spouse, a friend, a sibling. You can still hear their voice, their laugh. You find yourself talking to them out loud sometimes, not in confusion, but in comfort. You still carry them, even now, and some days the missing becomes almost unbearable, not because you're weak, but because you loved well. And the cost of love, as any wise elder knows, is grief. If you didn't hurt, it wouldn't have meant anything. So in a way, that ache you carry is proof of a life well lived and deeply connected. But with that clarity also comes a strange kind of forgiveness, not just for others, but for yourself. You start to understand your younger self, the things you said, the choices you made, the people you lost. You stop expecting perfection. You see that you were doing your best with what you knew at the time. You stop judging yourself by the worst moments and begin to see the entire arc, the whole life, not just your regrets, but your efforts, your heart. And this forgiveness is quiet. No fanfare, no big declarations. Just a soft release, like unclenching a fist you didn't realize had been tight for decades. It's also around this age that many people begin to make peace with the idea of the end. Not in a morbid way, not in fear, but in acceptance. The truth is, after 80, death is no longer a distant concept. It's real, it's present, it's come close. Maybe in a hospital room, maybe in a funeral home, maybe just in a quiet night where your breath felt a little too shallow. And while that reality can be jarring, it can also be strangely liberating. You realize that you don't need to keep running. You don't need to prove anything. You don't need to win any more arguments, chase validation, or carry the weight of other people's expectations. You get to just be, and being, simply being, becomes enough. I once spoke to a man named Elias. He was 89 and had lost much, his wife, 2 of his 3 children, and the majority of his mobility. But he still found joy, not in grand events, not in bucket list adventures, but in the simplest things. Every morning, he told me, I pour a cup of coffee and look out the window. I watch the wind move the leaves. Some days, that's all I do. And you know what? It's enough. He wasn't trying to escape his age or deny it. He was honoring it, living it, breathing it in fully. That's the kind of quiet dignity that can only come when you've walked through enough loss to finally understand the true weight and worth of being alive. And for those who fear becoming a burden, that fear is perhaps one of the cruelest lies of aging. Society whispers that once you slow down, once you need help, you're no longer useful. But usefulness is not the same as value. You were never valuable because of what you could do. You were always valuable because of who you are, your stories, your wisdom, your perspective. These are gifts no younger person can manufacture. They only come with time. You might not carry groceries anymore, but you carry memory. You might not build houses, but you build meaning. You hold generations of love, mistakes, insight, laughter, survival. That is not a burden. That is a legacy. One that cannot be seen on a scan or written on a resume, but one that shapes everyone who knows you. Even relationships shift after 80. Children become caretakers. Friends become caregivers. Grandchildren grow taller than you and speak in slang you don't always understand. And for many, the roles reverse, slowly at first, then all at once. You start asking for rides instead of offering them. You're invited instead of doing the inviting. You find yourself sitting in the passenger seat more often, and not just in cars, in life. But even here, there is an invitation to let go of control, to receive without guilt, to let others show you love in the way you once showed them. It's not weakness. It's the full circle of life. You gave. Now, let yourself be given to. There's also the quiet courage of letting go. Letting go of things you once fought hard to hold on to. The house that holds too many stairs. The old clothes that no longer fit your life. The grudges that only age you further. The roles you once performed with pride, but no longer need. There's freedom in that surrender. A kind of peace that only comes when you finally understand that nothing is meant to be permanent. Not even you. And instead of fighting that truth, you begin to lean into it. To trust it. To let it guide you into something softer, slower, but no less meaningful. And though many things become harder after 80, there are also things that become easier. You laugh quicker. You cry freely. You forgive faster. You speak truth without fear. You begin to know what matters and what doesn't. You stop caring what people think and start caring how people feel. You take joy in smaller victories. You admire sunsets more. You hold hands longer. You call your siblings more. You say, I love you without needing a reason. That's not decay. That's refinement. That's the beautiful stripping away of everything false until all that remains is love. Real, raw, unfiltered love. So if you're wondering what's left after 80, what's still ahead, the answer is so much. Not in years, perhaps, but in depth, in presence, in grace. There's still conversations that will touch your soul. Sunrises that will make you pause. Memories yet to be made, even if they're quiet ones. There are still chances to say thank you, to say sorry, to say goodbye, to say yes. And if you can, let this be the time where you no longer ask, what did I miss? And instead ask, what can I still give? Because that giving of time, of wisdom, of kindness, of peace, that's where the meaning lives now. Life after 80 is not an epilogue. It is a chapter all its own. A chapter that holds beauty, yes, but only if you are brave enough to open your eyes to both the pain and the possibility. No one told you the truth, because the truth is hard, but you can handle it. You've been through enough to know that truth, even when it hurts, sets you free. You are not fading. You are arriving into a kind of wisdom, stillness, and clarity that the younger world cannot yet understand. Let them run. Let them rush. You have earned the right to walk slowly, to speak deliberately, to love deeply, and to live, truly live, right here, right now, exactly as you are. And perhaps the most sacred part of all this, you get to decide how this story ends. Not in dates or diagnoses, but in tone, in intention, in how you treat others, in how you treat yourself. You get to write the final lines, not as a victim of time, but as a steward of it. You are still the author, still the storyteller, still the soul behind the eyes. And that is a truth that not even age can erase. So here's to the brutally honest, achingly beautiful, deeply human truth about life after 80. May it not frighten you. May it not harden you. May it simply remind you that even in the face of fading things, your light is still yours to keep and to shine.